What is good, everyone? We are back again. Quinny and Stish in the building. It's the End Product Podcast. I'm just going to make sure that I've got all my audios looking good. Quinny, how you doing, sir? Had a good weekend?
Awesome, mate. I've had my weekend was good. It was my youngest son's birthday, and tomorrow, Stishy boy, it's St. Patrick's Day. You're in Dublin, I see.
I am.
It's my birthday.
Your birthday as well?
Yeah, it's my birthday weekend as well. So great time to be alive as ever. And I've had a great week to this point. Great day to the now, and looking forward to getting stuck into some end product, buddy.
Oh yeah, and on the subject of end product, before we get into the actual end product of the end product podcast this week, because we have had some end product finally. It's been a long time coming for me, and we want you to like, subscribe, share, all of that. We'll get that out of the way because I forget to say this every week, don't I, Quinny? We always talk about this. Give us a little review, thumbs up, and a share. We do enjoy it. And on the subject of end product, I had a big weekend. As I was saying to Quinny just off air, we've been discussing it in group chats in the week, and picked up a really good super rare. Managed to finish 6th in the U23 super rare last week. I think Ayumu Seko did everything he could to not make that happen for me. He ended up losing about 15, 20 points in the last 5-6 minutes of the game. But managed to scrape through. I think I beat JR Duke by about 0.06 points to scrape into that tier 2 pool, which with all of the tiers shuffling around, that tier 2 is like winning an old tier 1. So it was very, very nice. Managed to win Alberto Moleiro super rare. Quinny and I have been talking off air. We're quite excited about this young prospect. Quinny's been making me feel extremely happy about winning that. So we're going to talk a little bit about him, I'm sure. Also, managed to pick up my first Manchester United card on the platform, and it was a win. I can't complain. How good is that? Jadon Sancho, definitely one of my favourite players there as well. A lot of future upside for him. Big fan of him and big supporter of him as well for all of the stuff that he went through the summer. So super happy to add him to my gallery. And on top of that, I won Camilo Vargas, a rare goalkeeper card. Always nice to win a goalkeeper, and Robin Proper. So all in, absolutely fantastic weekend for me in terms of end product. Quinny, did you have any joy? I know you had no Celtic fixture this weekend. Did anything else manage to land for you?
The lads at FC Barcelona were just all over the place. Even the teams that did, like the players that did do well, I beg your pardon. There was just no reality where I was going to line up the team that would have done anything in maybe one division. I had a good score from a forward, a goalkeeper, a mid, and then those four. And then there was a bunch of our guys that did kind of a wee bit above average or whatever. So yeah, not much for me at all. The drafts I had some sniper action. Every draft team had one player just bulleted out of it, and a DNP, but the rest of the guys doing pretty well overall. So yeah, a bit of an empty game week for the return of Memphis Depay as captain. But look forward to in the midweek. Actually, I've got a little bit of Thursday night action on the go. Crossing my fingers and toes, Tierney gets a start. I'm assured he'll get minutes regardless. But I would need a mammoth score from him, so he needs to start. Brais Mendes and Trubin to be in the sniff of anything. So midweek's got a wee bit of nothing to it, but it's all about the week, all about the weekend for me, Stish.
Yeah, I'm not doing too badly. I have got a little shout in the midweek. I think my big hope for this midweek was actually my U23 team, which on paper looked great. Muric in goal, Famos Mendy at the back, Gvardiol, Verts captain, and Zarori up front. So that pre-game week, I was like, that looks pretty decent. And then literally, as soon as the game week opened, Famos Mendy I'd missed was not announced in the squad for the game. I know McBride was on the receiving end of that bit of bad news as well. So yeah, Famos Mendy straight away kind of dropped out, and then obviously Gvardiol took a hell of a beating later on. So I didn't feel as bad about that. That team's almost dead in the water now. It still says it could technically win if nothing else happens and Verts hits 100, but I don't think it's not going to be anywhere near the rewards. But I do have I just missed out on cap 240 with a 4-player team. missed out by 3 and a bit points, which is a bit annoying. But I do have a Cap 270 rare, which is currently sat in the cards. Kevin Trapp managed to put up 36, even though he conceded 3 against Napoli, so he did okay. Di Lorenzo managed to bag an assist. He's put up a score of 91. And then I had Tony Cruz as my captain. I wish I'd given that to Di Lorenzo now. But Cruz put up 58.8, respectable. So that leaves me with Anthony and Gerard Moreno to play tonight. Not sure if Moreno starts or not. Same with Anthony, really. I think, that be interesting to see how we come out for that fixture. But I'd expect him to get some minutes. But yeah, there's a little glimmer of hope for a bit of end products in the midweek there. Fingers crossed. I don't know why, but the Cap 270s have I've been felt a bit drawn to them this midweek and maybe even the weekend coming. I'm not sure what it is, but
it's all those card prizes, I think, in 270. That's the temptation, But I was saying as well, like your reward stash, see, when I looked at them and I seen like the quality of them across the bow, I was thinking, wow, man, you must have absolutely killed it this week and you've done great. But there was a lot of Sorare managers out there that were getting mad quality in the low tiers at the midweek. I seen Sam Ty, the football guy, he won a Sven Coombs as a tier 5.
That's right. Yeah, I saw that.
It's crazy mental. And there was a bunch of other ones like that as well. And I thought at first maybe you'd got like Moleiro as a dodgy tier 3 or something, or Sancho as a tier 4 or something.
I think they were. Yeah, they
actually, you actually had some good teams.
I do think I think Robin Proper might have been a tier 3. And I think from the announcement that Sorare put out that they made a mistake, right? And it had mostly affected 5, 4. And did it affect tier 3 as well? Because Robin Proper is quite a good reward for a tier 3, I think. At least in terms of his scoring output. I'm not too sure about his value, but I think, as far as challenger defenders go, he's a pretty solid option. Something I'm going to keep hold of him. But yeah, definitely saw a few of that. I think there was an announcement. It was a little bit vague as to like what had actually happened, but I think some people in tier 5s and 4s got 3s and 2s or something like that. So, I think the sentiment was pretty good online, probably because of that. I think a lot of people, I saw one just before I came on air. I think someone had posted up a tier 5 they won that was the same card that they'd won the previous week for finishing in tier 2. So they were right at the bottom of tier 5 and won the same card that was a tier 2 the week prior. But that was before we all knew that there was some kind of bug. But
it's a lovely mistake to happen.
It is. If you're in the rewards that week, it is anyway. But I can imagine. Hopefully, we don't get the other end of it this weekend, and we start pulling tier 1s and 2s and open them to find the tier 5s in there.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely not hope for the reverse if you're in the big money prizes for sure. But yeah, so because all those wins, mate, like the playing goalkeeper, Sancho, even I was just looking at Sancho's scores, like they're improving. He's back in the team and all the rest of it. I think he'll hit a great patch before the season finishes. And like that Moleiro, like even though he's a prospect, like he plays every week. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think he takes a portion of set pieces. You need to check Sorare data or whatever. But so all those cards, like instantly, and like this is the thing I love about Sorare when you're, and not that you're building your gallery stuff, but just for anyone out there that's kind of watching this, regardless of what scarcity or whatever you're operating at, when you get a week like that where you get 3 or 4 pieces just drop into your account that instantly become options on one level or another, it's huge what a difference it makes. And then that's when you get the real taste for it. And I say not that you're there, of course, but just for people at home, because that's just one thing that me and you both love about the podcast, Stish, of course, is getting stuck into like the nitty gritty of like building teams, winning the market and all the rest of it. And regardless of like the way Sorare's built now, like the scarcity that anyone's playing with, it really doesn't matter, because it's all scalable up and down in terms of like where you're at for your budget or whatever. So like seeing those cards can all drop into your gallery regardless of whatever you do with them. I said to you first of all, is like you cannot sell the Sancho being a first owner reward card and all that. Like you opened up with your son and all that. You're telling me as well, like, that's a card, man. That for me, that has to get cemented into the wall now. But great win, mate. Overall, great weekend. It definitely was. I feel like I haven't had a game week like that for a long time where I had some rewards to open that I was genuinely excited about. I was like, waiting for that. On a Tuesday night, I do my son's football training, and by the time he comes off,
we get in the car and I can normally open them there. So that has been the case for the last few weeks, but I haven't had anything that exciting. I think I won a Barini a few weeks back. That was quite a good one to win. But this week I had quite high expectations, and yeah, he was there with me watching it, and yeah, he's a Man United fan. So when we saw the like England forward Man United, he screamed. He was like, "Man United!" We got people in the cars parked next to us and looking at what's going on in there.
Boom, man.
So yeah, I wish I'd recorded the sound of it. I should have recorded the sound. Like normally, what I do is I'll record the screen, and I'll do like I'll kind of like overdub it when I'm in a quieter area or whatever. Like I'll kind of talk it through, and then we'll upload the sort of reward openings to YouTube or TikTok or Insta or wherever they go. But I really wish that I'd have captured that because he was so excited, and I was as well. Like winning a Man United card is. I'm sure I've mentioned it on here before. Is like, you know, I've been looking at the Man United cards for ages because I love the idea of having that same buzz that you get with your Celtic stack going into the weekend, knowing your team's got a big game. You're excited about the game, but you're also excited about this potential Sorare output. And I'm like, I need that.
Yep.
Even if it's just to plug it into Champ Euro every week, I want that, and I want it to be Man United. And I've been tracking the sort of prices for a little while. And I think that the team that I'd want, or like the 5 players that I'd really want, are going to cost me in the region of about 3 ETH. And I'm like, don't really want to chuck 3 ETH at it. But if I could win a couple of those cards, like, you know, if I could win a De Gea, I think, you know, I think the forward card you really want is probably Rashford. But Sancho is just as good if you can figure out the weeks he's going to start, right? So yeah. I've got Anthony, but in his Ajax kit, I think...
with some of the slack that Anthony gets, but and the kind of waning form of some of the other guys at Man United, like I'm a huge Sancho fan. Like I'm raging he went to Man United because, you know, I'd love to see him go back to City. Yeah. And he was great at Dortmund, even if it didn't really work out for him at Man United, blah blah whatever. But like I think he's proper quality, and once he's in that team, plays like starts like 7 games on the bounce or something, you know, he'll be reigning 70s, 90s. You know, no problem.
Yeah. I hope so. I do like it when we see him fully fit, fully flying. He is like an excellent player, and I think that he does fit the Ten Hag system. I just think that the one thing Sancho maybe doesn't have that I think Ten Hag likes is he plays like what a lot of people refer to as inverted wide forward now. So like he'll put a right-footed forward on the left side and an Antony on the right side on his left, right. And I think Sancho isn't like that. He's more of a traditional winger that likes to play on his outside foot. He doesn't cut inside quite as much as the other two do. He's definitely got it in his game. But I think if he can nail that on a little bit more, I wouldn't be surprised in a few games' time that we start seeing Rashford as the like central focal point with Sancho and Antony either side. I think Weghorst offers a little bit more in sort of like aerial threat, but we just don't really play like that. So I don't think Wout's been quite as he's not been quite as impactful as I think we might have hoped, but he just gives a slightly better option in terms of, I guess, like his defensive operations to comparing him to someone like Martial, who is obviously like a bit of an injury prone player as well. So yeah. I mean, there's talk of us signing Harry Kane at the end of the season, and I think that would be amazing. That would be the perfect signing for me, I think. And fingers crossed it happens. But yeah, I could sit here and talk about Man United all podcasts. I'm sure we're already boring some people to tears in the chat. But on the subject of the chat, shout out Zalabanzi, Ian Sorare, Rascal Mazaki, all the people showing us early signals. Thanks for being here. If you're listening to this in the future via Spotify podcast or something, or maybe watching it back on YouTube via Quinny's channel, we do this live every week, usually on like Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. It's been, isn't it? We try and get Tony in. He's been hard to tie down of late, but we're here on Thursdays quite often. So keep an eye on us on Twitter, and you can get involved in the chat. But quite a lot of the chat coming in about those tiers. Zalabanzi says that they think it might have been a bit of a snowball effect. Reckon that tier 1, 2, and 3 were getting rewards from higher in the pool than usual. I can only speak to my experience on that. In the week when I knew I was going to win a tier 2, I had a look at that pool and it was incredible. At the top end of the pool, you had people like Donnarumma. But looking at what was won out of that U23 Super Rare pool, it was mostly the cards that were a bit lower down in the league that I won. And Moleiro was right at the bottom of that. And obviously I finished in the last place for a tier 2. So I was expecting something in that bottom 10. And Moleiro was probably the one player in there that I'd probably like seen the least of. So I spent maybe an hour kind of like digging through highlight reels of him. And then when I won him, I went back and looked again just to try and figure out, is this a hold? Is he going to get signed by Liverpool and sat on the bench somewhere for a few seasons? But after speaking to Quinny and a few other people and seeing the videos, I've kind of like settled on keeping hold of him and hoping he gets a good move. Quinny's kind of like touted this idea of a Benfica, and that, I mean, like that, just the thought of that alone is quite exciting. Like that would be a great move.
Or like Villarreal or something, you know. But it doesn't. Yeah. I think the only a guy like him, and there's a few other guys out there that are like this kid. As long as it's not Barca, City, or Chelsea, you're probably kind of fine with wherever they go at this stage of their career. As long as they're going to play to an extent, you know. You want young kids to. He's also in a great position now, but there's been a few guys over Worlds, and this is part of the reason that I wasn't like had a mad outrage to the whole Division 2 stuff, because there's been a few, like, and I mean a few, right? And I do mean world class as well, or top level players come out of Division 2s over the last like 10 years or something like that, you know. And, you know, like Marco Verratti is probably the most famous one. Sandro Tonali now is kind of in that mode as well. Darwin Núñez, like I've said to you, Darwin Núñez went to Benfica for like 20-30 million euros from Almeria in the Segunda division. So, like, it's not unheard of that this kind of thing happens, you know. I say it's not regular, right, but it does happen, you know, in these leagues. And I think Bundesliga too, and like Kante came from League, or Mahrez, one of them came from League 2 as well, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, like those guys, I say, as long as it's just not one of the big bench teams, you know, Bayern as well, I'd put on that list. Inter Milan potentially. Big bench teams, you don't want young guys anywhere near them. So anywhere else is good. Yeah,
I would agree with that. With a bit of luck, you know, he stays there to the end of the season and like picks up some interesting links. I think that the links I've seen at the minute are like Barcelona, Liverpool, and Aston Villa. And I'm not sure if any of those are a good move for him. Ideally, I think he stays in Spain, like you said, like a Villarreal or something like that would probably be the one. Or you know, even if Las Palmas go up and they then end up holding on to him, because I think they're second at the moment. So, you know, they got a chance of going up. And if they do that, then maybe he stays for another season, or like, you know, they sign a new contract and put his like buyout clause right up that puts clubs off for another season, maybe, just to give him a chance to play in La Liga if he does go up. I think that would be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. But yeah, so someone has actually posed a question to you, Quinny, that I would normally like wait a little bit later in the podcast to do this, but it's quite an interesting question. And they said it's probably mostly for you, and I can see why. They said, a question for Quinny. I see with the SPFL split fixtures not showing up yet, do you think the SPFL prices are on the way down due to Sorare data only showing 4 to 5 games left? Do you think people had not realised that there's quite a lot of fixtures still yet to be played in that division?
1,000%. People that get cards that they don't know about as a reward, and you know, like rewards that are really the downward pressure on the market for these prices, you know, when you see them go down. So if you pick up a reward, you go into Sorare data, and imagine it was like the Austrian league. Now Austria also has a split. Maybe you know that, maybe you don't. But imagine it was Austria, and you looked at it and there's like 2 games left or something. You'd be like, oh crap, better try and get this rid before the game week deadline. You know, what's the floor? And then just take a wee clip off the top, you know, and then get it listed. You get 4 of those cards issued as a reward. There's 4 wee steps down. And yeah, I think that 100% is probably a factor for maybe not necessarily Celtic cards, but maybe like Motherwell cards and stuff like that. And I think the bottom half split, because what we've seen done to great effect, I think by Techers for Belgium one season, somebody done it for Austria as well. It might have been Techers again or somebody else, but is getting teams in the bottom half of the split that are actually probably on the up form-wise, but just have overall not had the season to finish top half or whatever. And then you get the last 5 games of the season, and at least 2 or 3 of them, they should spank somebody, you know. I think that's not been priced into Scotland at all. Like Ross County are very much on the up, Motherwell are very much on the up at the moment, and a few other teams in that bottom half. And I don't think that's factored in at all, that they'll get 2 or 3 games at the end of the season they should score particularly well in, where they won't play Celtic or Rangers, for example, or Hibs or Hearts or whoever else, you know.
Yeah. I remember that in the K-League as well, because they do similarly. They have a split, and last season Daegu found themselves in that bottom half, which made them quite an appealing pickup if you were looking for any of those sort of players for the like tail end of the season. And Daegu were definitely like that in the K-League. There's quite a few divisions that do that split, isn't there? Like it's something that I kind of find another league every season that I didn't realise has a split that has one. And it's a really interesting trading tactic, but also gameplay wise, like you said, you can find one of those teams that's on the up that is in the bottom half and absolutely shouldn't be. Then there is some play to be had with those players. Because I think there's also that factor that a lot of people wonder if they're going to get relegated as well, and that gets priced in.
Because that's dangerous for some of these challenger leagues.
Yeah.
All the challenger leagues, that is dangerous.
That's it, yeah. And I've definitely got a few cards that I'm keeping an eye on at the moment. I lost a couple to relegation last season and decided to keep hold of. So I had Thomas van den Belt, who went down in the Eredivisie. He's a young player. He was looking like he might move, then he didn't. And I just decided to keep hold of him. And he's actually been absolutely killing it in the second tier of the Eredivisie. I think Feyenoord tried to sign him in the winter window and it was blocked, and he got a bit upset about that. But I think it's like some of those cards, again, this comes down to gallery size, doesn't it? We talk about the patience, and you do have to have some patience, but it's amazing how quick the game weeks actually go. Like a year sounds like a long time, but in so rare terms, like a year goes by so quickly. Like it doesn't feel like almost a year ago that I was looking at Thomas van den Belt, who is looking like he's going to go down, and starting to figure out what I'm going to do with him. Do you get rid of him now, or do you get rid of him in the winter, or do you just hold on to him? And I think I've got a few of those. I think with you worry a little bit less, don't you, in those top 5 divisions going down into Division 2, knowing that they've still got coverage. But in some cases, and this will be the first time we really see what those prices do, like looking at Southampton as a good example, it'd be interesting to see what their kind of like top picks are going to be doing price-wise between now and the end of the season, because the idea of picking up like maybe a Southampton defensive stack for next season now, quite interesting, especially given they've got maybe Bazunu and Bella Kotchap as a U23 pairing. I think that is a really interesting, pickup like right now. And I've been looking at it, wondering if it's a good idea or not, because I think we're seeing it on the flip side with the Burnley cards at the moment. I feel like are kind of plateaued a little bit, because people can see they're probably going to go up, but they're going to go up into the Premier League. Won't be quite as good, but I do think Burnley will stay up next season going up. I think they've shown enough, with a bit of investment there. They're quite a well-followed club. I'd imagine that they will invest well if they go up. Company seems to have a decent harmony there. He knows his starting 11. He's not changing things too much. So it's going to be really interesting to see between now and maybe May what the prices of those players going down into D2 do, and the players that are going up into Champ do from D2. It's going to be quite a fascinating few months, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Just looking at the table now, Burnley do right high on 83 points, 13 points ahead of Sheffield. And then potentially in the playoffs, teams that have licenses, Norwich are 4 points outside the playoffs, but with 9 games to go, you never know with these things. Coventry and Watford are basically in the same conversation. And then who else do we have with a license further down the table? Millwall. Where are Millwall? Millwall are in the playoffs. Oh, wow. So they are, yeah. Millwall are up there in 6th. And is there somebody else at the bottom? I don't think we have anyone at the bottom, do we? Huddersfield or anything? No. None of them have good licenses. Aye, so that's it. Actually, all quite in amongst the playoffs. And imagine that. Imagine all the championship clubs got promoted. Or no, they couldn't all get promoted, but imagine they all were in the playoffs and stuff. That'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, another thing that would be interesting that I've not thought, but just popped into my head as you were saying that, is obviously you kind of like shooting yourself in the foot when one of these teams that we've got licenses for in the Championship goes up into the Prem, because the Prem is going to be covered again next season, almost undoubtedly, right? But be interesting to see what happens to the Prem clubs that go down, whether or not they pick up a license for next season. Because, you know, if you imagine, let's say Southampton go down, but then they don't renew the license, because then do they have to make an individual license with Southampton as a Championship club? Because they don't have the Championship license, they have the Premier League one. I wonder if they'll pick up those licenses, because they'll have to pick individual deals up with them, won't they?
I think there might be, yeah. Again, this is pure wild speculation from two guys that sit in the house talking about football, you know. But like, you know, we think about how like parachute payments and all that kind of stuff is structured. There is obviously like commercial mechanisms that happen when clubs are relegated and whatever, you know, from the Premier League. They're not involved in the TV deal anymore. They're not involved in this. They get this, blah blah blah, whatever. So. Yeah, that's, you know, sorry, I've probably said, listen, we also will have you if you get relegated. Don't worry about it. You know, look at St Etienne. Look what they did with St Etienne. Yeah. That's what they'll say, you know. Yeah, so I think, yeah, it'll probably just be an automatic switch where they just email somebody directly, or they just, there's somebody, I don't know, it'll be probably something like that in place, I would imagine. And it'll probably be an automatic thing. So as soon as you get your 3 relegated teams, you've automatically get 3 new Championship teams.
Before we know it, we just have, you know, like over the course of the next few years, teams that have gone up or down and just like got those licenses, we'll start to see, you know, a lot of this, won't we? You know, like in 3 or 4 seasons' time, we might have like League 1 and League 2 teams minted on the platform somewhere. It's like it's not unimaginable, is it? Anywhere that's got that Opta coverage could potentially come on board at some point. But I think they had to get all of these things, they had to get all their ducks in a row with the top divisions first, didn't they? I think they still need to really nail down that Ligue 1 for next season. Probably be a top of the to-do list with this Serie A as well. Getting every club on board for next season. Just
like,
to really,
if you look at the bottom 3 in the Prem, like Southampton, let's say, who do you think would actually go down? I think Southampton and Bournemouth are probably kind of there at this point.
Yeah.
And I can't believe Nottingham Forest are in the bottom, just for how rubbish they started the season and how much of a patchwork squad they've got. But hey, they're up in 14th. But I think all 3 of those teams would turn into monster global players next year if they kept a lot of their squads. You know, like if you look at like the Southampton and the Leeds and the Bournemouth squads in particular, you know, or maybe not Leeds because they've bought some international guys over the last year or so, but like they look like properly top quality Championship teams. You know, like Shea Adams and Ward-Prowse and, you know, the kind of guys Bournemouth have also got on their books. I know they spent some money on that Otara or whatever, and he's looked really good, by the way. But again, if you look at like Ismail Assar playing in Watford, you know, he does great in the Championship as well. And anyway, so I think maybe getting some of those Prem cards, like even as rewards, even if they're stinking rewards, it's maybe one that you just, oh, by the way, he'll play next season, 46 games, midweeks on the British calendar, you know, for like the European cycle and whatever, you know, yada yada. You know, so definitely a dynamic that we'll all be learning about this year for the first time properly, because D2 has only been properly available in this fashion since November or something like that, you know, pre-World Cup. You know, it's not that old. So this will be fun and exciting to see now, maybe if the wheels are starting to turn. And see how that goes for sure. I'll be keeping my Ward-Prowse.
Yeah, I was going to say, because if they go down, I can't see Ward-Prowse playing in the Champ. Personally, I think that he'll get picked up by another Prem club. I don't know what you think, but it's hard to imagine him playing in the Championship with the kind of pedigree that he's got, you know. But could you imagine the damage he would do in the Championship? He would be a fantastic player. He'd be a great card to have. I think if you look at how Cullen's doing at Burnley, he's kind of like he's almost like the Tony Kroos of the Championship. He just puts up these massive all-around scores every game. He's a 55 plus man every game. So not ideal for cap modes, but if you need to plug him into like an all-star team or something like that, or a cap 270 or something like that, he almost always will deliver you that 55 plus. But yeah, I don't know. Ward-Prowse maybe feels a little bit too. I think Southampton will go down and they'll lose a few players, but I think quite a lot of them, you know, are not going to get picked up by Prem clubs. But they'll have a lot of good young talent, I think, next season. Be interesting to see what happens with like players like Bazunu, because Bazunu is young, but from what I was doing some reading as well, like quite a lot of Southampton fans expect their number 2 to take his place when he comes back fully from injury. I think he's been back on the bench. I need to check, but I was looking this up a few weeks ago, trying to figure out where, if any, there were any sort of bargains goalkeeper wise in the Prem. And Southampton's number 2 is quite fancied by the fans, just because he's got a bit of experience. So if Southampton were to go down and maybe someone else picks up Bazunu, and he probably wouldn't walk straight back into a Prem club, but he's quality. Do you know what I mean? He justifies his
McCarthy.
It's like, McCarthy. I was looking at him because you can pick him up quite cheap, and if Bazunu left when Southampton went down, he'd definitely be their keeper next season. And he's pretty cheap. I think a lot of the number 2 keepers are cheap, and I think this is a good time to pick up those number 2s because end of the season happens, relegations, transfers, etc., etc. Those number 2s now, this is the time to like take your punt on a few of them, maybe, because especially right now, I feel like the market it's found its level. I might be wrong, but I feel like this feels a bit like the market's bottomed out now. You can pick up some serious bargains now that if they start playing, especially goalkeepers, if you can pick a bargain goalkeeper up who starts playing next season, you can 3 or 4x your investment straight away. Especially in rare, I think, and in limited, I guess, as well. Actually, limited and rares. I think super rare, because I picked up Kengo Nagai in the closed season. He went down with Shimizu of Japan. He transferred to Yokohama, who went up, and I picked him up in the auction, his super rare, for like 58 quid. And he's played every game so far this season for the Yokohama. They haven't done particularly well, but he has started every game. And I think I had him listed at maybe like 250 quid, so it's still cheap for a super rare. Didn't get any bites. So I just don't think the super rare market has that quick flip ability that you get with rares or limiteds in terms of goalkeeper trading. I don't know if you do any of that. Do you ever get involved in the trading side of things, Quinny? Quick flips here and there?
I not often enough, to be quite honest with you. I've not got the stomach for it too often, to be honest with you. I only really feel confident going into doing these if I can get, utility out of them, or it makes a team better, or it activates something else. And the trading aspect will be something that will help me action something, if you know what I mean, because I know that, like Memphis Depay, I traded him in last week. Also, it was quite a sentimental one as well, but I traded him in when market value was like 0.1 or something, like 0.18, maybe at the highest. And then he's been back in the team now, and he's easily doubled in price since I picked him back up. If you look at his trading history over the last week or so, 10 days, I can't remember when I got him back in exactly, but I must have got him right before I got him the Thursday, and then he played the Saturday and scored 2 or something. So I could sell him, but I'm not going to sell him. But I just seen that as that's the time for me to get him in, and I know that I'm getting at such a good time that if I did change my mind on it, then I should have a good opportunity for an exit point easily enough on multiple occasions or whatever, So it's more in that kind of vein. And then it's then it's maybe if somebody gets they're worth too much, I get a nosebleed on it, and I think, right, well, I should probably sell this guy now, and move him on in some way.
I picked up one in the auctions recently. He's been in my watch list for ages, but it's Mohamed Ali Cho, who is like a French youth international.
The guy at Sociedad.
Yeah, I picked him up.
Oh, mate, yes. Love
He's
it.
such a good player. He's just come back from injury. 130 quid on the auction I got him for. I've had him in my watch list before he even had cards on the platform.
Same.
When he got that move to Sociedad, his initial cards were quite pricey, and he wasn't getting minutes, and then he got injured, and he's just come back from injury now. He's coming in off the bench a couple of times already, but he looks a serious prospect to me. And I just got 130 quid to just sit on that for a couple of seasons. We know none of us can determine exactly where the market goes in a couple of seasons from now. That 130 quid might still be the price he's at with the supply going up, and that really depends on onboarding. But yeah, and I was similar to you. It was this felt like the time to pick him up. Like his L15s doesn't look great, but if you've seen him play, he is a player. He's a great player. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he does get more minutes at Sociedad before the end of the season, and hopefully, no recurrence of his injury that's kept him out most of this season. But I think, what is he? He's 19. I think he's still 19. Yeah, he is. He's 19. French under 21 international. They have a pretty good history for, attacking forwards, don't they? So, yeah, quite excited for him. He was what felt like a cheap pickup. And there's a few more as well. Like, I don't know if you have been following. Did you see Ghent last night at all?
I seen the score was crazy, but I don't remember what it was now. I was surprised they were playing on a Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever it was. Surprised. Was it Başakşehir, wasn't it?
It was, I think, it was. It was the Turkish side. So their player, Gift Orban, scored the quickest
that's
ever.
what it was.
Quickest ever Champions League hat trick in like 20 minutes. I think he scored it, something like that. Or it might have even been less. It might have been. No, sorry. It was like 3 minutes, wasn't it? It was a seriously fast hat trick. Gift. Let me just Google this and remind myself exactly how many minutes it took him. So Gift Orban, who doesn't have cards on the platform at the minute. Oh, Twitter is over capacity. So how many minutes did it take him? Hold on. I'm reading it in so many different languages right now, but I think it was just over 3 minutes. He scored a hat trick. Yeah, 3 minutes, 24 seconds. Fastest ever Champions League hat trick. He's a 20-year-old Nigerian, plays for Ghent. I've had him in my watch list, and I've seen there's like 800 people following him on Sorare as well. So that is going to be interesting if and when his cards come onto the platform. But I love following players like that who don't. I think like Foremost Mendy was one of those as well who I had followed. And I think I managed to catch his number one before anyone else realised that his cards had been minted. I don't think that we're going to have that opportunity with Gift Orban. I feel like he's a little bit more of a known quantity than Foremost Mendy, who was playing in like Ligue 2. But he, like you can see his scores. His L5 is 67. His L15 is 63. He's 20 years old. Going to be interesting to see what his early mints go for. But
they just produce all sorts of talent, that Ghent, don't they?
They do. They got a really good history for this kind of thing, haven't they? So that's another thing. You just think, where could he end up at the end of the season as well? A player like that in the Belgian league, putting up numbers in the Champions League, is, sets alarm bells ringing, doesn't it, at other clubs? And wouldn't be surprised. I'll be surprised if he's still at Ghent next season, given what he's done there in the last. What's he done? So over the course of this season, according to Sorare, 27 appearances, 23 goals for a 20-year-old is pretty amazing. Solid. So definitely one to watch there. Have you got any players on your watch list that don't have cards yet? Have you got any?
Well, I actually did see exactly what you're talking about there, Stish. I did sort of the exact same thing, and it kind of ties into the first thing you said to me, but I did a little bit of trading for this game week. I bought in a Pape Cisse rare for 30 quid, just so I had a striker playing this midweek. And obviously I knew as soon as I bought him, like as soon as the deadline locks, I need to get rid, because that's all I need them for. So as soon as the deadline locked, I took him, Jason Denier, who's got a mad injury, and he's in Saudi Arabia, and like in Cham, and somebody else. So I just took a bits of fodder, and I traded in for a Matias Arezzo, who's only got 12 rares. I had him followed from before he got a card. When he got a card, he was like £300 to £500 at least, and he wasn't even playing well or playing at all. And he's went back to Uruguay or whatever. And I'd just seen like tweets over like in the day or two before I made the trade. And then I went and checked him out. You can go and look at him on Flash Scores or something, but he scored like 12 goals in the last 8 games or something. And all these little scout pages are talking about him again. Like, oh, he's back home. He's back to being his old self again. And it's not scored on SO5, which is the fly in the ointment for right now. But I got a deal done with Pavel for it. And it is just like, it feels like the best time to get it in. It is just a bunch of trash I gave Pavel. It's also a red X card. But what I said to McBride and Hendo Stish in the chat I'm in with them is, this guy has NYCFC written all over him from where I'm sitting, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean? So it is a bit of a swing in the dark for me in that sense. But let's see where he ends up. So that's probably the only kind of one like that I've had any movement on recently. Bringing in a wee Matias Arezzo, who I wasn't even looking at. But again, I was saying that recently, Stish, and you know what it's like. And a lot of people watching this will probably be able to relate in some extent. But it's not always the best time to get the best guy to get in right now. You know, like the best time to get that show isn't probably the best time to get him is today, but you won't be able to use him tomorrow.
No.
And you'll probably be waiting a good while before you're like, oh, look at me, I picked him up, bottom dot, you know, and now he's bum. That takes ages to happen, you know, and it's one of these ones where that immediate gratification doesn't happen with those trades, and
No.
you just need to kind of bite the bullet on it and go, I back this guy, the price looks quality, this guy's going to make it, and he will fit because he will play for this team in this style and blah, blah, blah. And then, the payoff from it is, I think it's extra good because you've had to call it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that as well. I think it's sometimes you just got to pull the trigger on the card and let them just sit in your gallery for a bit, and you know, let them find their way into the side. You know, even once they get a few games or a couple of goals of that, like I've seen it with this season with Chiesa, where I kind of held on to him all through that injury, and then he came back, but he's not quite, you know, he's still almost like recovering from that injury. He keeps getting little knocks and he finds himself in and out of the side every other week. And I've not really been able to use him, even though he has come back from injury. But it's Federico Chiesa. You'd expect him to come good at some point. I just cannot sell him at these prices. But he's one of those cards that, like, you know, there'll probably be people on the other side of that trade that are trying to pick him up now while his price is low. Because if he hits a top form, or you know, if Juventus just start to click finally, and he finds himself in the starting lineup every week, you know, there's all that talk of like that Di Maria, Chiesa, Vlahovic kind of like front three, and there's just not really been much of an opportunity for the three of them to play regularly. I think, you know, Di Maria's older as well; he has to be rotated, but they just haven't. You know, Pogba's coming back from injury now. I think Juventus have got have been plagued with these kind of injuries, but it's sometimes you just got to sit and wait, and sometimes you do have to wait until like they hit a run of like 5 starts, couple of goals, couple of assists or whatever, and then go, right, this is the time where you can put them in one of your main lineups and trust that they're going to start and hopefully pick up a decisive. Talking of that, there's 2 things I wanted to pick up. There's a great question in the chat, which we'll do first, actually, because it's a slightly different topic to what we're covering at the minute. But so Kayan Simmons, I think might be the name, says you should do an episode on beginners or slightly more than beginner on Sorare. It would have been great to hear an episode when I first started. Throwing myself into La Liga and Premier Pro this weekend for the first time. Kepa, the main man. If you don't know Quinny, particularly, his YouTube channel is very good for anything like that. So a little shout out to Quinny's YouTube channel. There's a lot of good YouTube content out there, but I think Quinny's definitely got a lot of that covered. So if you are a beginner and you're listening to this, or you've stumbled into the live stream, check out Quinny 3001 on YouTube. You'll find a lot of that. I'm sure Quinny will fire a link into the chat in a minute. But on that subject, Quinny, for the podcast, because it's not something that we do really cover on the podcast. We just expect that everyone is like nerds on the chat, on the platform, right? But every now and then, I guess we will get beginners in. What if you had any kind of tips for people that are moving into the pro divisions from sort of like the free play modes? What do you think like your tips would be in terms of like purchasing? Because of what you have to purchase 4 limiteds, I think, don't you? I haven't entered any of those pro. So yeah, what would your sort of strategy be to pick up those first 4 cards in, let's say, like the Prem or Serie A? Like what would your tips be?
I think when you're starting out, like particularly with the way the market is now, and if it is limited, I don't think you need to compromise on the selections you're making as much as you used to for like a 30 quid midfielder or for a 50 quid striker, you know? So like I would always, and with that in mind, like if it was like, oh, well, I only had 40 quid for a striker, just wait another week, because the guy you actually really want isn't actually that far away. And what a lot of like OGs on Sorare and what a lot of people that have been like playing it over the last 18 months or so have had to do is make compromises where like, oh, I'd love to get a Jadon Sancho, but he's not got a card, so I'll get an Anthony at Ajax or something, you know. And then when these things then develop, it's like, oh, brilliant, well, I can now get Sancho, but I've got Anthony. And then it's like, oh, okay, when to sell him, when to buy him, and we're all in that kind of movement. Whereas when you're starting today, you don't need to make any of those compromises at all. And like I say, because of the way the market is, like really, if you wait long enough, especially at limited level, not many people are without striking distance of the everyman, I would say. if you put some time and effort into saving up towards them, you know, in particular, some of the marquee pieces, if you wanted to go into the 3-digit level, you know, especially. So with that, yeah, if starting anywhere near around now is make your, like, let's say, like when I first opened up Sorare, and I've kind of said this in different bits and bobs, right? But I had a list, and I wish I still had it somewhere, but it was like, who do I think, if I had every card available on Sorare, back then there was like 8 clubs or something, you know, and then like a couple, and then like the Belgian league or something. It's like, if I had everyone, who would I buy? And then I was trying to then cross that over with who was available, and then just get the ones I would have got anyway, regardless. And that was some guys like Oblak and Depay and Ferran Torres and Soler. There's a Gabriel Magalhaes. There's a few of them that came out quite quickly. But I say now, you don't need to work out, oh, well, who's missing. If anything, it will be, oh, crap, a guy is missing. It'll be odd now, you know. So I would really make like a genuine list of like, who do I think's the top 5 goalkeepers in the world, the top 5 defenders, midfielders, forwards, and then, right, how much do they all cost? What leagues do they all play in? What makes sense? And then let me go, I'm going to build my team. I don't think Toni Kroos is the best midfielder in the world. I think it's Kimmich. Or I don't think it's Kimmich or Kroos. I think it's Brozovic or whatever, you know. Build your team.
Like assemble your Avengers, basically. Like get your team together. I think that is the beauty of limiteds as well. And I've said, like we said this on the podcast before. I feel like now is the time. Like for the first time in years, I've been very comfortable telling my friends it's not expensive to get involved, because it really isn't. And you could it's even affordable, like you said. Like if you're getting into those 3 digits, you know, like if you had like say 400 or 500 quid to invest, you could pick up a seriously good you know, like pro team. So like maybe use a goalkeeper or a forward common, but then just buy the other 4 pieces. You could buy.
Mate, if you had £400 or £500, Messi is 238.
Is that how low Messi is now? Yeah, as a limited.
So if you had £400 or £500 and you're wanting to build a stud of a team, you could get Messi for 200 quid, and then the amount of guys that are 30 to 50 quid that are quality.
Yeah.
You could really build the team that you want to build. Even and then if you did that with your initial 400 or 500 quid, and then you're like, oh, I've not got a defender. Well, do you know what? Just wait and save up, because you've already got like 4 studs lined up. You know what I mean? And if you need to wait till next payday at the end of the month for next month to buy the 20 quid defender, then suck it up and deal with it. You've got a Messi for 200.
Doing that, you know, it's making me consider maybe I put like a couple $100 quid into limit, because I've got some good limited cards, but I don't really have like a team that I'm like, that team is. So if I could literally go out and buy a Leo Messi like esque player or scorer for, you know, like he's probably like the most expensive limited out there, right? Him or Mbappe or someone like that, probably like 2 of the most expensive cards. Maybe that's what I might even consider, that, and just like put out a team of studs in.
Haaland is 330.
330
for Haaland, and Mbappe 600 basically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd go quite as wild as that, but maybe I'd look at a Prem team or something like that and do a Prem team, put it in Champ. Maybe I do the Man United team there and just do like what would be 3 ETH. But
Harry Kane's 100 quid. You could do a Man United team and put Harry Kane up front for probably quite cheap.
That'd be decent. Yeah, I'd take that. Maybe I might have a little look into that. Someone else actually asked a question to me in the chat, and it kind of like bolts on from this as well, in that, especially in limited. So they asked how I was getting on with my strategy to get into the limited, into the Legends modes. So I have what I believe to be like the optimal options for limited in Legend, right? And I've had no joy. I've never won a card in Legend mode with a team that includes. So I've got what I think. This is what I think is the optimal strategy for Legend mode in my head, right? It might not be. And looking at like what finishes in the top positions, it hasn't been up to this point. It hasn't come good. But maybe in rare, it will come better than in limited. But what I did in limited was I have a Zidane because I wanted a Zidane, not because I was buying him to use him necessarily. But I have this Zidane and I have a Laudrup. So that's like a Juve midfielder or a Bayern midfielder. I think the Laudrup idea was more that's Kimmich, right? The problem with Laudrup as a midfield option is most of Bayern's starting 11, they actually only field 2 midfielders, usually. Midfield cards, rather. Like, so they'll field Kimmich, who's a midfield card, and maybe Goretzka. but like even like your Musiala's is classified as a forward now. Like all of their team are forwards basically, or defenders.
The team they played at the weekend, mate, was mental. See if you actually look at the team, it's like Sané is centre midfield with Musiala ahead of Kimmich. It's like they're not even trying to play midfield; they're just playing a defence, Kimmich, and strikers. Like
so you're literally relying on Kimmich to like have a great game, and if he doesn't,
and then the defenders are Cancelo and Davis.
Yeah, it's crazy. So as much as like on paper, I thought I get a Kimmich in, but then like the problem with that strategy is if Kimmich doesn't bang, I'm literally going to score a Goretzka, because if Musiala scores a hat trick, he's a forward. If Sané plays midfield, he's a forward. So like the Juventus midfield, they normally field 5 or 6 midfield cards in their starting 11. So I've got options of like Rabiot or like they even Chiesa's a midfield card this season. So it's like and Di Maria's a midfield card. So there's a lot of options in that Juve team. A lot. If you pick up like a Nedved or something like that, you're probably going to be better off than you will with the Laudrup card. In recent weeks, that has been the case for me. And then up top, and I think this, I don't know if anyone could argue with this as an optimal strategy, but Van Basten Ajax card and Cruyff Ajax card. So you've got 2 Ajax forwards. Ajax obviously like win most weekends, and you've got Tadic there who puts up big scores even if he doesn't score. So even if their forwards don't score, which is very rare, they've got Kudus, they've got Brobby, they've got Bergwijn, they've got Tadic, they've got Conceição. They have so many good forwards. Berghaus as well is a forward card. So Ajax have a lot of options and a big chance of putting up 100. If you put 2 forwards from Ajax in that team, and then so I've got basically 2 Ajax forwards. Then I normally put in maybe at the moment it is more often than not Zidane. So I've got Zidane who's capable across 6 players. I've got Ajax who can put 100 up on any given week. That's 200 points straight away. And then I'll normally look at the goalkeeper I've got in limiteds with the best chance of a clean sheet, and pair that normally with like Rodrigo from Zenit, who very often puts up a 60, 70 plus. But it's never happened for me all in the same week, ever. It's usually my defender that lets me down. The goalkeepers normally do keep a clean sheet, but I think I had Bastoni in there this weekend who put a 38 up, and it's like so I'm always about 10, 15 points off the prizes in limited at the moment. It'll come good. I feel like that is a good strategy. But in rares, I just haven't pulled the trigger on those purchases to like buy the Cruyff and the Van Basten. I tried to buy a Van Basten rare off of a few people, but I was quite, I didn't want to pay too much for it. So yeah, I do. My options in rare are at the moment I went with Casillas because it just opens it up every week for me, and obviously Diogo Costa is a pretty good goalkeeper card to use in that category. And I picked up Baresi just to open up the opportunity. So I don't ever really expect too much from my Legends rare entry. It's more of a hit and hope. But I do think that it's shocking that I haven't won anything in limited still, because I think that is the optimum strategy. I'd be keen to hear if anyone thinks that there's a better one than that. But I've seen a few people do the double up on the Ajax forwards, and I think that's why they are priced the way they are, because I think a lot of people got wise to that. Having Cruyff and Van Basten Ajax cards in the same team is like on any given week like an absolute smasher. Do you know what I mean? If they hit 100, there's no one outside that top 100 who doesn't have both of those in their team. So the Hullet PSV midfield is decent as well. McGettigan, that's a good point. I think Veerman put up 100 again this weekend, didn't he? Another thing actually that I noticed this week, in the rare mode, you kind of need to use unique and super rares in there as well, because they get their bonus. So you can use one unique. You can use.
How much did unique Ronaldo go for?
I think when Moon won it, I don't remember what it went for. Let's have a look.
I'm going to check that now. 2 ETH. Wow, that's all right.
Are you joking?
No.
2 ETH.
That's not bad. Unique Ronaldo R9 Real Madrid kit. Champions
Especially
League
now,
winning season.
you put that player in a team, he's the only unique legend on the platform, isn't he? That one, I think. So yeah, I noticed that in the rare category, I think the rules were different when I bought those 2 rares that I did, but you kind of have to put a couple of super rares and maybe even a unique in that lineup. So for me, it's
super rares auctions for 1.3 and 0.9 both 4 months ago.
Wow, that unique looks a steal, especially if, like, you know, and if you look at the prizes that have been won in that division, like Jude Bellingham was the top prize in it the other week. It's like not bad prizes at all. So maybe, you know, this weekend I was looking actually at my options in D2. My goalkeeper options this weekend are pretty poor in every division in Super Rare. So it might pay me to put some of my better Super Rares in with maybe I have a proper go at Legends Rare Pro this weekend. But yeah, I've never really been close. I've had entries in there, but yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go the whole hog there, just because I think maybe now you do need a super rare, and probably, like, you know, ideally you'd have 2 super rare legend cards, because then they get that extra bonus and they've got the chance of hitting a big. They're more likely to hit a big score, aren't they? You don't have to worry, because so long as someone in that team hits a big score, your legends are getting that. So yeah, maybe the tactic there is get a couple of super rare legends in, and then you can really go for it. A couple of super rare legends and maybe a rare of either like Cruyff or Van Basten. I think that might be like the optimum there. But I don't know. I think the forward's another one, isn't it? That depends on the side. There are forward cards out there. Like, I think, is it Panenka a forward? And there's a few random forward cards that probably won't be fantastic. I think the Panenka's like Rapid Vienna or something like that, isn't it? It's
yeah.
There's a few cheap options out there, but I don't think you can play this game cheaply. That is one thing I think I've realised when I was putting teams together recently, is looking at who scores well and who wins. You have to put super rares in. Don't have to put legend super rares in there, though. You can put, you know, a couple of legends in. You know, if I put Veerman in the other week, but then if I put Veerman in there, I'm not using him in U23, and that just feels like sacrilege. Doesn't feel right. Something wrong putting Veerman in anywhere but there or Challenger for me. But yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do this weekend. I was looking today and I'm not feeling that confident about any of my super rare entries because of my goalkeeper options. So it might just be that I go heavy in like in the pro divisions, spread those cards into good pro entries instead of D2 this weekend, purely because my goalkeeping options don't have any good fixtures, all away from home, all playing like, you know, top 5, top 6 clubs. So yeah, as we said on the podcast the other week, if you're putting them in cap modes, goalkeeper like conceding 3 goals kills it pretty much.
Yeah.
So I might just avoid using them in anything that I'm particularly excited about this weekend. How's your weekend looking, Quinny? You got Celtic back in the mix, or?
Yeah, so I'm going to Celtic game. It's on Saturday. My birthday's Friday. And Celtic, I looked through the fixtures. Benfica have got a decent game. Salzburg have got a decent game. And Celtic have got a decent game. Celtic probably have the least decent of those 3, to be honest. But the form we're in, like, we just battered Hearts 2 games in a row in Cup in the league. And Hearts are arguably on paper at the very least better than Hibs. So, like, I'm not like, oh, we're playing Hibs, you know, kind of past that now. I think we're beating everyone now every week. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to it. NYCFC, by the way, also have quite a good fixture this week. They're at home at DC United, and as it's probably everyone kind of knows the stereotypes around St. Patrick's Day, it's really big in New York as well, you know. So my St. Patrick's Day teams, mate, are going to be, my rares in particular, are all mad Celtic NYC hybrids.
Nice.
So it's proper St. Paddy's Day teams, you know. So that'll be good fun. They better bloody win something.
Yeah, I'm not feeling super confident. I think I cashed in all of my big win chips last weekend, so I'm not expecting too much end product this weekend from my teams. But at the moment, the only team I've like lined up just now is actually looking like I might put my strongest team into All-Star Pro this week, just because I don't think my U23 options are quite as strong. Let me just get my lineup builder up and remind myself who. So as it stands at the moment, what I think is the first team I've put together is my all-star pro, I've got Silveira in goal, who has got like a team right at the bottom of the league. He is away from home, but should keep a clean sheet. Di Lorenzo captain. They play Salernitana, I believe, or Torino. No, Torino the weekend. Veerman super rare, Cherky super rare, and Isiaga Silla, who I won a few weeks back. He's playing for Montpellier against Clermont, and he's been in massively good form. And I think that's probably the best and safest 5 that I can pick at the moment in terms of should all start, have good fixtures. A lot of my goalkeepers have got really bad fixtures this weekend, so it's really hard to pick. I think the goalkeepers are going to dictate where my strong teams go more than anything else this weekend, just to try and put the best team I can put in based off the goalkeepers that have a potential for a clean sheet. But yeah, not feeling wildly confident, although the sort of little graphs on Sorare data do show some pretty nice potential for that 5 there. Looking back at game week 3-4-5, that 5 would have scored 525, which would have almost certainly been that must have been the top score. That would have been the top score that week, I'd imagine. So if I can hit anything like that, I will be absolutely over the moon. But yeah, I mean, anything over 400, I'll take. I think that got me in. Actually, that 400 was in rare, not rare pro last weekend, but that finished me, I think, 60th. And that was what landed me the Vargas rare. So I'll take that again. I'll be more than happy with that. Winning a bit of ETH was lovely, actually. That was one of the first times I've picked up one of those like extra bonus prizes for finishing high up in All-Star. So that kind of that helps sweeten the deal a little bit for like moving my main team into Rare Pro and not in. It's usually in U23. That feels a bit unusual for me. But where's your big team going this weekend, Quinny?
It's definitely going to be All-Star. The everything. So I've deleted my teams like every 12 hours since the game week's opened. I've just done it while we're doing this as well, because like Greg Taylor is not in the Scotland squad, and Steve Clarke is saying it's a Celtic problem. Celtic need to elaborate. He's carrying a little knock or a little injury or something. He picked up. So I've seen this. I did the Celtic podcast earlier. I won't bore everyone too much with the same story getting said twice, but basically, like, I should have seen the Bernabeu minutes coming because he seemed to get a dead leg like 3 weeks ago or something. But he did just play at the weekend 90 minutes against Hearts and looked A-OK. There was no concerns about him coming into this game until the Scotland team came out and Steve Clarke's comments came out. And I don't know. I'm trying to read Stish if it is like maybe he did just play through that game against Hearts with a dead leg, a bit of a bruising or something. With the view of obviously maybe Bernabeu can play this game and then he can have the international break to recover, perhaps. Or is it a case of Scotland have also called up to the squad guys that are also left backs, Robertson, Tierney, and Hickey? So like to play Cyprus in Spain, how many minutes would Greg Taylor actually get? Is it even worth his while, even Buddy going out there? So Steve Clarke also said it's a Celtic issue in this whole quote as well. So like, that kind of scuppers makes him very light on defence, particularly very light on quality top-end defenders like a Taylor. So now Taylor has to come right out the reckoning for me unless I see pictures of him training and running about and stuff, because I just don't know what to make of it, because even if it is the initial one, maybe he doesn't play at the weekend, the Bernabeu plays. Maybe that was the plan, muscle through the Hearts game there and then give Bernabeu some minutes before the break, rest up and we go again.
Yeah, I hear that. So, yeah, so your game week's basically resting on that Celtic fixture. You brought up a quite interesting point there as well. Obviously, we've got the international break coming. How many players or clubs do you expect to sort of like rest players that are expected to go away on international duty, or do you think that they don't care? It's
this side of it, they don't care. When they come back, they care, because then they see what nick they're in and then they think, right, well, we need you for the rest of the season. So you can sit this game, you'll only get 40 minutes here or, But this side of the coin, I don't think they care. I think they'll put the pressure on the national team to then look after them post-travelling and all the rest of it,
I would totally agree with that. But where I won't agree with that is I don't feel like that's the way it works in Japan. I don't know if you followed it in the past, but the Japanese national team, and this might be of interest to you as well, Kosei Tani's been called up to the international team.
I see that.
And he obviously was benched last week, which was a little bit unexpected. I knew it was going to happen at some point, but I started to get the feeling that he would just be benched for the cup, and the manager was just trying to be like, careful about the way he worded his answers about Higashiguchi in the press. But with Tani going away with the international team, when I remember coming up to the World Cup, a lot of the Japanese clubs were resting their players who were off for the World Cup, maybe out of like respect for the national team. So I just wonder what that means for Tani between now and the international break. And I guess it also will be interesting to see if he gets any minutes in those games, because I think they've also got Keisuke Asako out there and Daniel Schmidt. So that's the three keepers. So they basically, like, Gonda's out of the picture, and all of the kind of traditional Japanese squad goalkeepers have kind of switched out. Schmidt's been in amongst them before, but Tani and Asako have only really been there to warm the bench. But I think one of them may even find themselves as the number one in the international break ahead of Schmidt, just because he's been there, done that. And also he hasn't actually started many games for the Japanese national team. So it's kind of strange that you would drop the goalkeeper who played in the World Cup to bring another one who sat on the bench the whole time with two new keepers. That makes me think that one of those two is going to become the prospective number one for the Japanese international setup. And I just feel like there's a different culture in that part of the world, whereas I don't think the respect is there for international football in Europe as much. It's like it gets in the way of league football. But in Asia, I just feel that the call up for the national team just has a slightly different like status attached to it. So I'm not expecting Tani to start this weekend because of it. I don't know what you think. But,
I think Tani will start one of the games, and I think you're quite right. This is like a changing of the guard at national team level. But I think, in my experience of having Tani, at youth international level, predominantly it was always him and Osako, and he was always preferred in the Olympics and all these kind of things. So I think that'll be good for the head coach to see both of them. And I think that Schmidt is just always in amongst the squad, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's a European-based, not 38 years old goalkeeper, so he'll probably feature because he is like the veteran of the group. So I think out of the two games, you'll probably see all three goalkeepers maybe even feature. At least two of them will. I think you'll get two different starters. And I think the future is Tani.
You think the future is Tani? We got Rascal Misaki in the chat who says that they believe that Schmidt will get the number one. They don't think that Tani or Osako will get that look in at the number one just yet. So it'll be interesting to see how the next few weeks pan out. International breaks at the end of this month, hasn't it? I think we've got a couple of weeks. But I think Tululu is saying that to look out for Ueda, expecting them to potentially be the starting striker for Japan. I think Japan are a really interesting team in transition at the moment. You've got players like Mitoma, like lighting the Premier League up at the moment as well. And I think a lot of clubs will have an eye on him. I think Brighton are a good club at the moment, and I think they seem like they're a really good fit for him. But there must be a lot of top clubs looking at Mitoma right now. I don't know what you reckon, Quinny, but he is in some form, and he's like, this form is in the tough division, the Premier League, right? And he's giving top clubs problems. Do you think there's a move for him somewhere? Do you think that he will attract interest this summer?
Now, I think the problem you've got with this is, like, who would he actually work well for? I think he would work well for probably Man United, maybe Newcastle. Definitely he would work well for City. Liverpool would be a question mark. Chelsea, no chance. Arsenal would probably work out. So it's a case of then Tottenham, I think, would be a problem. So then it's a case of which one of those teams actually would be interested in him. And then, ultimately would a deal get done? And if it's not one of those teams, then anywhere else he goes to in the Premier League, because Brighton are very custom built to the way they play, to facilitating guys like, like Mitoma's brilliant, and we can all see his talent. We've seen his talent at Kawasaki and whatever, right? But he could have it's not a given that he could have went to the Premier League and done this. Like, if he played this year for Forest, do you think we would have seen this Mitoma? I don't think so, So, like, I think he understands that. I think a lot of the Brighton players have understood that. Like Casiedo, when that transfer's not broken, and that transfer broke down, he's just got right back to work and went at it. Same with Yves Bissouma previously, So I think they really understand what Brighton gives them, and it is like a situation that enhances the players that they've got in their squad, and that's not easily found elsewhere. And I think Mitoma will probably be wise to that. So in terms of a transfer, I don't know. Outside of England, I think it would be amazing in so many other places.
I see him
but being in Brighton, it's hard to see him leaving England, you know.
Yeah. I could see him in Dortmund. Could see him.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I don't know if like, you know, like a Leon or something like that would be good for him. But I don't know if Leon or like Leon may even
the spending power for moves like these. The French teams don't have the power for this stuff. I don't think.
I don't know if someone moves from even a Brighton to Leon feels like an unusual move as well. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe a Dortmund be interesting, and then I guess like an Atletico Madrid or something like that would be quite interesting as well. But
yeah, I don't see Spain. I think it would have to be Germany or
stay in England.
Yeah, stay in England really, or go somewhere funky, you know, like Celtic.
Do you think? I mean, like where do you think Celtic in the sort of like in the eyes of a player like that? What do you think of Celtic? Do you think a Celtic move looks like a step up from a Brighton? I mean, obviously Brighton this season has been a little bit different because you know they could well finish in the European places, but in any normal season, you know, you'd expect Brighton to be like mid-table. Do you think a move from Brighton to Celtic would feel like a step up for Mitoma, or do you think that he would feel like that was like a sideways step at the moment? Given
I definitely think everyone involved would say sideways to backwards movement, you know, because like to really develop at the top end, you need to be playing top end football every week. You know what I mean? Like we do see teams, and PSG suffer from this, right? At the elite level, you know, they suffer at this where like, you know, we've seen it with Salzburg, we've seen it with Shakhtar, we've seen it with some Turkish teams, we've even seen Feyenoord and Ajax get to finals and whatever. The smaller teams in these leagues can do it once in a while, you know, but to be consistently like world class, top of the food chain players, you need to be playing at that level every week. And yeah, you're not playing Champions League, yeah, you're not winning medals or whatever, but for him, he's only concerned about himself as an individual. He's not a Brighton fan, he's not a Celtic fan, he's not an Aston Villa fan or wherever he's going to end up next, you know. It's all about him getting the most out of himself and progressing, you know. So I think moving from Brighton to Celtic, the only way I think you would see that as a good move is that if he thinks, if I play one season of Champions League, I could move to PSG, I could move to Barca, I could move to a team like that if I have a wicked Champions League campaign with a team, and the best team that can offer me that opportunity is Celtic, if that was the scenario that was before him, you know. But I don't think if it's just we phone him up and go, hey, pal, do you want to move up? He'll probably say, nah, I'm all right, you know, like, I'm doing pal, you know, because he is at the top level every Saturday, every Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd agree with all you just said there. It's just, it is that level of competition. I suppose, like you say, you see it when like an Ajax gets to the final of European competition. When they played Man United a few years.
It happens. But it doesn't happen all the time. And it's not expected. Ajax are never the favourite for the Europa League or something like that, you know.
Yeah. No, I feel that. It's a good shout. But yeah, be interesting to see what happens with Mitoma come the end of the season. But I just feel like
I think he'll stay there. Basically. I
think he should stay there as well. Like
you've got another year being the man.
It suits him. He can become one of the top guys there as well, because I think if they might lose McAllister at the end of the season. I feel like a lot of clubs are buzzing around him at the moment. I think like McAllister's like, for me, he's almost nailed on for like a Liverpool. Liverpool need that kind of player at the moment. I think Liverpool's midfield, there's a lot of talk in the press, isn't there, of them picking up something. They need that, you know, the Bellingham is the big story. But if Liverpool don't qualify for the Champions League next season, which looks unlikely now, why would Bellingham go there? I'm not sure. I know I'm a Man United fan, I might be a bit biased, but would Bellingham go to a Liverpool that's not in the Champions League? I don't know. Are they going to have the money to find?
I don't think Liverpool are interested in spending over 70 million on somebody. I don't think they're entertaining those kind of transfers. That's why they never got Enzo, you know, because that was the transfer that was slapping them in the face to do. But maybe Bellingham's the exception because he is so young and he's English, and you can say, right, kind of what Chelsea are doing with their financial gymnastics, where you say, all right, it was in a 10-year contract, so even though it's 180 million, it's only really 18 million a season or something. They do something funky like that about it. I don't see them, but I don't see them in any world, because I think FSG or whatever they're called, the people that own Liverpool, I think they're quite eager to sell, you know, and like putting 100 million quid out your pocket to add a asset onto the balance sheet that probably doesn't make that worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's basically the Mike Ashley problem that Newcastle were in for 10 years, where he's like, if I put 50 million in and then I sell tomorrow, I've just lost 50 million, you know, kind of vibes, you know. So
yeah,
I don't see them doing that.
I think as well, a lot of the press is sort of just leading with this whole angle that Steven Gerrard is kind of like his role model, kind of growing up as a player. And, you know, that is all well and good, but money talks these days. And, you know, especially any club selling to a Premier League side. I mean, Liverpool have been quite fortunate in recent years. They managed to get some pretty good deals over the line. I think, you know, like the price they paid for some of their players is quite surprising compared to like some of the purchases United have made, for example. But yeah, I mean, Jude Bellingham, where does he go? A lot of people in the chat saying they think they could see him to City. Be a good signing. I think Jude Bellingham is one of them players that he will enhance any team he goes to because he is just such a good player. But be interesting to see what happens with him at the end of the season. But I think you're right. If a club is looking to sell the club, they're not looking to invest 100 million in a new player. And I think that is another part that needs to be figured out with Man United and these new owners. This needs to happen soon before these transfer windows open up again, because otherwise we will have exactly the same problem when it comes to trying to bring in a top class forward like a Harry Kane or someone like that. That if we are going out to buy that caliber of player, we need the club sold before then, because no one is dipping into their pockets right before they sell up. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, man. I've just seen the time, hour and 20 live. So wow. I guess it's around about that time we wrap up. Wish everyone listening a good game week. Have you got any?
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, I'll be in Dublin. Very excited for that. I need to make sure that my hotels are booked, actually, and that is a job for me off the back of doing this. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Quinny, always a pleasure, never a chore. And yeah, happy birthday for the weekend as well, mate. Enjoy birthday weekend. Hopefully Celtic get you a little present in there and a bit of end product. Little present.
So buddy.
Fingers crossed. Good luck everyone, and thanks for hanging out. Like, subscribe, share, comment, all of that stuff, and we will be back again next week with another episode. Cheers all.